Hello, everybody, and welcome. Sorry for the weird start and then stop there. I realized after I had started broadcasting that I didn't change the stream information in Twitch, so I was still broadcasting like I was going to do some kind of Gundam build. So that's clearly not what we're doing here tonight, so there we go. Welcome in. So welcome back. I hope everybody's having a good one. I hope that the world is treating you nicely. It's been a long couple of days. These weeks in this semester are getting full.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Kilted Preacher is Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
KP, as always, my friend, thank you so much for becoming Spartacus once again. Vipers, how's it going? Green Herring, hello. Hope that you all are both well. Yeah, it's been a long week, and it's only Tuesday. This does not bode well for the rest of the week, just to be honest. So, what up, Tad? How's it going? You missed the Toggy stream this weekend, but glad to see it come together. Yeah, I mean, I've still got parts of it, like this guy. We've got this much panel lined done so far, but you get to do today again on Thursday, too. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a... I feel you. I've got another today on Thursday as well, and hopefully by then I'm done grading stuff, but we will see. We will see. It turns out that when you have classes that are twice as big as any classes that you've ever had in the past, it takes twice as long as to get through all the grading, which I sort of knew that was going to happen, but I did not know it would be like quite so powerful. But I'm getting elbow licks from a puppy who happens to be here, I guess, to offer me emotional support. She likes getting her butt scratched. Well, I can't reach there. Oh yeah. You know, emotional support puppies are an important part of the larger world. Starting work at 5 because you have to work around other people's work schedules sucks. What Gundam sticker did I get from USA Gundam Store? That is the High New. And then I've got a couple of new type stickers over here. Got just a new type logo, and then this one that's like new type, but it's the Matrix stuff, so it's kind of neat. I know that you got a Mermaid Gundam one. I think they put one in when you order stuff, which I guess is a little incentive to order from them. We can put something else and decorate the old cutting mat here. Yeah, so this was actually supposed to happen last week on Tuesday. However, last week got kind of crazy because of aforementioned large amounts of work. So we pushed to this week, and I got stuff done before the stream started. So, yeah. What's up, Rayflan? Good to see you. You didn't get one with your action base though, so maybe there's a minimum dollar amount. Maybe so. Praise Mermaid Gundam. Mermaid Gundam is an interesting Gundam. There's a lot of interesting Gundams in that series, though. So I don't know. I haven't made an order from USA Gundam Store in a while. I'd like to try to get stuff from them because, well, I mean, I did technically get some stuff from them, but it's because KP actually went there and bought it for me. So my headcanon is that last week was peak. What do you think of Rings of Power, Shane? Well, there you go. I actually made that before stream. So, yeah, we we were supposed to talk about Nelson Mandela last week. We clearly didn't because of life happening. So let us talk about Nelson Mandela now. You ready for some ZA history lessons? Yeah. About my feelings on the Morbius movie. Morbius was a movie and it made money. Is that a shock that it made any money? Or is that just like a description of the fact that it made money? I have not seen Morbius. KP is on a little bit of a bachelor hiatus, not hiatus, a bachelor stint, and is digging into what I usually call the flu list. So there are movies that aren't good that I don't really want to watch, but if I'm sick on the couch with the flu and I don't want to move, those are the movies that I'll end up watching. Just largely called the flu list. And Morbius is at the bottom of my flu list. So it's a messy movie, right? All right, so we are talking about Nelson Mandela. Okay, I've already got that typed. Why is it not? Oh, okay. I've already literally cut that up there. The puppy is actually on the floor right behind me. Kaylee, you want to come up here? You want to come see me? Come here. Come here. Hey, come here. Come here. Come here. Come and see me. Come on. Come on. Oh, yes. There's the puppy. Hello. What you doing? Are you about to go to sleep? You're about to take a nap? Oh, yes. Let's get all 18 hours of those naps in. Oh, thank you for the puppy sugars. Oh, my goodness. Oh, you want to scratch your ears? Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that feels so good. Oh, yeah. Look at you just like, you're literally just shedding fluffle. I just swept in here over the weekend and got all of your fluffle out. So I guess you're just refluffulating the room, huh? Oh, yes. She... What's up, Allie? Good to see you. So that's the puppy. Her name is Kaylee. She is named after the engineer on the Firefly ship Serenity. So that's the dog. And we share the puppy emotes. We have two. We have the animated puppy head pat emote. And then we have her wearing this ridiculous unicorn flowery headdress thing. What's up, Ann? Good to see you. For those of you that are not already, if I can type here, go give Allie Briggs Art a follow. Allie is a streamer that I've known for a while, hung out in Allie's chat, goofed off, had a good time, always enjoyed it, but met in person at Dragon Con, and I have decided that if I ever, I don't know, if at some point in my history, or maybe in the history of some alternate universe where I had two sisters instead of one, that alternate universe, Allie is my sister, because good gracious, have we just had a lot of just really bizarrely similar scenarios. Like stuff like, and it's not just like, oh, did you go to school? I went to school too. But stuff like, hey, have you ever had frog? And do you like frog, or do you like raccoon better? And this kind of stuff is not things that I share with many children or many friends, right? So yeah, it's just like, hey, did you eat stuff out of the woods because, it was cheaper than buying it at the store? Yeah. So, that kind of stuff. So, anyway, Allie is great, and you should go give Allie a follow and see cool art. Also, Infernal is in the stream. Infernal, hello. If you're not following Infernal, go give Infernal a follow, because you can hang out and watch games or chat or occasionally see some cosplay making stuff and have a good time, because Anne is a delight and is incredibly thoughtful and funny, and it's always a good time hanging out in the Infernal stream. All right, so with no further ado, let us talk about Nelson Mandela. You were trying to get people to come watch history things today, but they are streaming now. That's okay. It's all good. The world is a thing, and VODs get saved, and they can come by later on. But I appreciate the thought. I'm also jealous of your fancy little Direct Relief Charity 2018 badge. That's very shiny, and I like it. I want to be a snowflake.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Nixolotl is in the chat. Thank you so much for that subscription. Welcome back to the Club of the Spartaci. The delightful head pat emote that you see there that I shared is from Nixolotl. And if you want cool things like that for your world, you should go give Nixolotl all of your money. And also watch Nixolotl stream, because it's a delight watching all of these things happen. A Twitch baby was born. Twitch baby. You get to name the Twitch baby. I will care for it as well as I can, but I will be honest and say that I can't remember any of the Twitch babies that I've named so far. So I think it's better if someone else remembers this Twitch baby and tries to take care of it. Twitch baby is a flour sack. Fair enough. Okay, so Nelson Mandela. First off, what are we talking about? Well, clearly he's a guy. No duh. Right? We have South Africa, the region down here that we are going to be talking about a lot. Specifically, he is going to be from this region. I know this is a horrible map, but most of the maps made of this area prior to the modern borders were made by people in England or perhaps the Netherlands, who had mapped this all out. And this little region right here that I've colored in yellow is Timbuland, the land of the Timbu. The Timbu are people that are part of a larger South African regional culture called the Xhosa. And there's kind of a, it's not like a when you say it, it's more like a breathy K, like the Xhosa, which is what you see here. Of course, keeping along the line of the pun title, we have Closer to the Heart, which is one of my favorite Rush songs. If you don't know who Rush is, their drummer is amazing, and their lyrics are usually pretty good. So, anyway, they're from Timbuland. His parents are interesting people. This is his father. His father's name was Godla Mandela, and he was in the larger nobility of Timbuland. You can see him here dressed in his official garb. His mother was actually part of another royal family that was sort of a junior or cadet branch of the larger group, but both of these people are going to be pretty influential in his life. So his mother's name is Noskeni. So, and I'm probably not particularly pronouncing any of this properly, because I have not been trained in speaking in this way. I've just listened to people on YouTube say it, and I'm trying to imitate the way that they're saying it, so I tried. Anyway, so who are these people? Well, his father was on the tribal council. His father also practiced the traditional Xhosa religion, which was polytheist. So he is going to be interestingly married to Nelson Mandela's mother, who was a rather devout Methodist Christian. And that's going to be kind of a weird relationship for a little while. And after the first few years of, by the way, Nelson Mandela was born in 1918, and his birth name is not Nelson. Oh man, I'm going to have to try to say this. Typing is hard. His birth name is this, but the HL makes this kind of like kla sound, so it's Roli Klakla, which is his birth name. And this basically means like troublemaker or problem child, which is an interesting name to start with, and kind of fortuitous or foreboding for the rest of this kid's life, given the events that we're about to discuss, right? So he's born. His dad basically leaves the picture pretty early on. His mother does most of the raising. This is fairly standard in the particular type of tribal structure that was around at that time. His dad was a very important man and did a lot of work and was supposed to be like directly involved in the royal council and all these things and the government things and stuff like this. So there we go. Now he is going to end up sort of not being raised by either of his parents, because after a little while he's going to move in with the chieftain of the Timbu culture, the guy that's sort of over the entire group here. And he does this because he starts going to a school in a different city than where his mother lived. And this is a Methodist school run by the Methodist Church. And it is there that the Methodist teachers are going to give him the finger quote Christian name Nelson. And because I have a difficult time saying his given name, we shall call him Nelson. And he's going to do pretty well at school. He's a pretty smart kid right off the bat, does pretty well, finishes up stuff pretty quickly. He is going to become a fairly devout Methodist himself. And so here, clearly taking more after mom than dad. But there are interesting developments in his viewpoint, according to him, at this particular time period, because according to his autobiography that he wrote in prison and then later published after prison, during this time period, he said that he started seeing white people in South Africa a little bit more as a bringer of culture and not necessarily an oppressor, which is an interesting viewpoint. Clearly here he had not been politicized or later on radicalized. This is just him sort of becoming aware of the wider world, where he's getting exposed to different ideas, and he saw the school that was being run as beneficial to him, giving him education, teaching him things, allowing him to apply to college, etc., as a positive experience. So, it's going to be interesting to sort of see how his ideology starts to change over time. He is going to wind up at a university called Fort Hare University. And it is in college that he is going to have sort of his first kind of moment where he starts looking a little bit more at the relationship between white colonizing people in South Africa and larger African culture, because one of the things that he studies a lot in college is actually African culture, the different groups of people, their histories, their languages, their cultures, etc. And when you start learning about stuff, and especially when you learn about things like the Union of South Africa, which was something that he apparently studied quite a bit. So in 1910, South Africa was not a unified country. It was a whole bunch of different colonies that were run at that point by the British. And in 1910, they passed a law of parliament, which basically unified all of these different colonies into the country of South Africa. And when they did that, they sort of finished stripping the last little bit of remains of regional political power from the tribal structure that had existed there prior to colonization. And they put all of this, of course, under a minority white rule. In that particular period of time, white people in South Africa were less than even 15% of the overall population, and yet they were, of course, in charge. They were the ones that had voting rights. They owned more than 90% of the land. The other 10% of the land was technically owned by the government and put into protectorates that were then given back to these tribal structures. This is very clearly something like, what the United States has with reservations. But a lot of these were not very well delineated, and there was a lot of trouble between white settlers moving out into this territory. If they were taking land from tribal peoples, this was not really something that the courts would back up. It took a long time for the gears to sort of move, if they moved at all. So Nelson's going to start studying all of this stuff, and this is going to have a pretty big effect on him. And he's going to start realizing that, maybe his initial view of white people as bringing this culture and this knowledge was not as complex as it needed to be. And he starts having some trouble with some of his teachers. And especially in class, because, all of the teachers are going to be white at this university. And he's in the minority of people even going to the university as a native African black person. So there's some early questioning of professors, and there's some early kind of argumentation that starts showing up here. This is very much still in the larger line of moving to be who he would become. So the arc of his life is not necessarily a sudden spike towards change. He's always been kind of moving in this direction. But he doesn't finish college. Have you ever been challenged by a student with a different worldview? Absolutely. It happens all the time. Usually what ends up happening is I try to do my best to let them speak their piece, and then I ask them more than 2 questions. And in all but the rarest of cases, once you ask them 2 or more questions, their entire argument breaks down. Because very few people in the age group that I teach are going to have what you might call a fully developed and fully sourced worldview. A lot of people believe things, and they know what they believe, but they don't know why they believe them. And after pressing past the surface, that worldview begins to be challenged, and I usually stop there. I don't like belittling people for not understanding things that they think that they understand. But I do always try to point out that if you're going to make an argument about something and you're going to say that this is the way that you view the world, you really should be prepared to make a case for that, including fully developed ideology, source material, justification for beliefs, etc. And sometimes that goes over okay, and other times they think that I'm picking on them and they hate it, and then they review me really badly. Even after I, tell them stuff like, hey, I'm just trying to help you out here. I'm trying to make you think about what you're saying, and I'm trying to help you develop your ideas better. And a lot of the times I'll even tell them how to make their point better, right? Like if you're trying to argue this point, the right way to argue it is to say it this way, so that you're getting outside of this logical fallacy that you're making right here. And I even try to explain what logical fallacies are and try to help them figure stuff out. Some people take to that. Other people don't, especially people that I typically teach students that are between 17 and 20. And that is a very convoluted period of time in a person's life, especially in the United States, where our culture basically bombards you and tells you that you have to become an adult and decide everything for the rest of your life in these 3 or 4 years, which I don't particularly agree with. But a lot of people make their minds up. They see something different. They go after it. They don't really study it. They just read something on, the internet, or they watch a TikTok video on it or something like that, and that becomes their worldview. And I don't think that's a safe or an effective way to create a worldview, right? If you're going to change the way that you think about the world, if you're going to change the paradigm of the way that you think overall, you should really do that in a reasoned and logical way. So, right. Trying to find their identity in an individual's culture. Absolutely. And that's a big part of it, where everybody has to find a way to be right. And nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. That's the thing, though. Like, there is wrong, and sometimes you might be wrong. And in the vast majority of instances where you are wrong, you're not going to die. And in many situations where you're wrong, nothing is going to happen to you at all, right? Like some weirdo college professor might tell you that the particular way that you're arguing is a logical fallacy, and if you changed your argument, you might make a better point, and then you might go, well, maybe I should think about this differently. And that might be a good thing, or it might not, because whatever. So here is Nelson Mandela, college years. This is from 1937, when he was in college, rather dapper young gentleman. Now, I mentioned before the tangent, which, by the way, is, as always, perfectly fine, that he didn't finish college because he's going to end up forming a student group because he doesn't really like the fact that the upperclassmen sort of ran the college campus, and he gets together what is basically like a student union where all of the people get to go together and make decisions together, and that causes a bit of a stir. But what actually gets him expelled is that he and his group of students start complaining about the food in the cafeteria, saying that it was really, really bad and that the school needed to change it. So he gets his first taste of getting stuck it to by the man, and they expel him from college for organizing students and causing disturbances. Because he just didn't like the meatloaf, I guess, right? Like, can we not have Taco Tuesday? Why did you get rid of Taco Tuesday? It's literally Taco Tuesday. I don't know if they were having Taco Tuesday, by the way. You get what I'm saying here. It's just a joke. Our college does Taco Tuesday, and when students remember that it's Tuesday, they get excited because it's tacos. And honestly, tacos are kind of exciting. I'm not going to lie. I really like tacos. I would, if given the opportunity right now, I would eat between 4 and 6 tacos.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! Schneegel, good to see you, my friend. And thank you so much for that subscription. Hope you're having a good one. Welcome to the club of the Spartaci. You had 2 noble tacos and 3 small tacos. See, and Nick's is like, I'm just eating tacos. And Viper's just, oh, that's a lie. Like, certainly you're pulling my leg here. You jest, right? You have had a taco, right, Vipers? Okay, the world has become unhinged. I would mail you a taco if it would last. If you ever come to visit, you could stay in the guest bedroom, and we'll go to. I don't know if I don't think it would. I don't think it would last because the it's not necessarily the temperature; it's the staleness, right? Because the shell would go stale over the course of however long it would take. What up, Tropical? Good to see you. Sneagle's only popping in for a bit before we have to go to a book talk, but yay sub. What are you reading? What's the book? Frozen soft taco might work. Maybe. You've had the option of getting a taco whenever. You've just never had the urge to try one. All right, so now what we need is a YouTube video of Viper's first taco. And I need you to record this and post this on YouTube. And if you do that, I will watch it on stream in total. Well, as long as it's under 10 minutes. I don't necessarily need you eating a taco while opining on like every single horrible thing in the world as a way to sneak in your opinion into the stream. But I saw that coming ahead of time, and I'm glad that I closed that loophole. It's okay if you don't like tacos. It's okay. I love tacos. Now I really want tacos, and I don't even know where to go to get one right now. I guess I could go to Taco Bell, but I don't eat Taco Bell anymore. Not since 2006. Get on with it! Okay, there we go. All right, so he gets kicked out of college, and he decides to go back home to Timbaland. And when he gets there, the chief, who he had been living with, goes, "Oh, good, I'm glad you're back. I've got a wife for you." And Nelson was like, "Wait, what?" Because arranged marriages were absolutely a thing in his culture. And his chief was like, "Yeah, I've got this nice young lady, and you're going to marry her." And he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm running away." So he packs up and just runs off to Johannesburg, which is one of the larger cities in South Africa. And he doesn't really have a job or any money or, a degree. So this is pretty bold, right? It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. Tell Eris to tell you where he was this weekend, and the suggestion given in chat has to do with you. It's funny. Wait, what? Tell Eris to tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell Eris to tell me where Eris was this weekend, and the suggestion given in chat. The suggestion has to do with me, and it's funny. Okay. What makes the perfect taco? The perfect taco is, and this is going to sound weird and potentially not PG-13, but the amount of spice and moisture in the meat component of the taco. I don't like really, really dry tacos. There's a magical point where, like, if you're having carnitas, or if you're having even ground beef, right? Just like ground beef taco. I don't want dry ground beef taco. I want a right level of spice and moisture with that. If you bite into the taco and it's an easy and clean experience, you're not doing it the right way, right? It needs to fall apart and it needs to drip. And I know that's really, really weird to be so specific, but that's what makes the perfect taco. Crazy Hunger, I will agree that the hunger level increases the savory nature of the taco. You were in Taco Bell in Barcelona and ate your first and last time of your life. The store was dirty and the food was very cold. Not anymore. I got food poisoning so bad from Taco Bell that I slept in the tub because the bathroom was too far away from my bed for me to wake up and make it there. That's how bad the food poisoning was. Taco Bell is not a good representation of a taco. I will agree to a point. My wife loves Taco Bell. There's a BDSM party. Interesting. Eris is streaming. He's telling a story, which is mind-blowing. Also interesting. You should try doner kebab. I do quite love doner kebab. I've had many, and I've had doner kebab in Turkey. And also in Jordan and in Greece. So I feel like I've got the authentic doner kebab experience going, and I would totally love a doner wrap. I'd take one of those as well. They're kind of taco adjacent, and I'd take that too. On a long enough timeline, all educational streams descend into food talk. It makes sense. No one wants... Yeah, exactly, Nick Slottle. Exactly. You've got to have that thing. I'm interested to know how I fit into the BDSM party, but we'll wait till Eris comes around, or I'll go bug him if we get finished before he does. Anyway, so Nelson Mandela runs off to Johannesburg. He doesn't really have a lot to go on. He doesn't really have a lot of connections. He gets kind of a low-level menial kind of job, and that doesn't last very long. But he falls in with some people that work at a law firm, and he gets a job as a secretary at this law firm. Now, This is an important moment for Mandela's life because at the law firm, the people that are going to be working with him are diverse and they're communists. Now, we know, if we know anything about Nelson Mandela, that he had affiliation with the Communist Party. Now, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be so specific and do so much proper preparation for this particular stream, because when you say Nelson Mandela was a communist, a lot of people might initially knee-jerk reaction and go, no, he wasn't. That's horrible. Communists are bad, and Nelson Mandela was good. Well, maybe that's why we're here on the stream today, to get a more full picture of a very complicated life of a guy that had a very, very long career in politics and activism. So it's at this point that he is going to run into a group of people that are going to be communists. Now, he's going to go to meetings with these people, but if we look again at his autobiography, he claims that at this stage in his life, he never joined the Communist Party. And in fact, he claims overall that he never joined the Communist Party, but we'll talk about some potential contradictory evidence a little bit later on. Anyway, his biggest argument with the concept of communism was the atheism component, because he, again, was a very devout Muslim. I'm sorry, not Muslim, Methodist, that other M thing, because, Methodist and Muslim is so close together. Anyway, he was a very devout Methodist, and he didn't like this whole atheist spin from communism, so he says that was one of the reasons why he didn't, fully join up with them. But being around lawyers and seeing the work that they were doing in South Africa is going to encourage him to start trying to get a law degree, almost indistinguishable theologically. I actually want to give that more consideration. I know that might have been an offhand joke, or it might have actually been you giving that more consideration than I have cycles in my brain to spare right now. But that'd be an interesting. I do see some parallel. Anyway, I don't have time to think about that right now. Remind me of that in the group chat, and we'll maybe pick on that for a little bit. This is the kind of stuff, by the way, that we talk about in the mod chat. Comparing complex theological systems and figuring out if Methodists and Muslims are the same people, essentially. John Wesley would take extreme exception to that comparison. Oh yeah, he would. But, he would take a lot of extreme exception to many things that actually were done in his name. But anyway. Okay, so he's going to go to... he's going to want to go to law school. But, of course, he didn't get his college degree yet, so he's going to finish his undergraduate degree, his bachelor's degree, by correspondence from the University of South Africa. And he's doing this while he's working at the law office. And when he gets the bachelor's degree, he decides to apply to law school, and he only makes it about a year and a half, 2 years into law school before he's going to flunk out. And he himself will say that he was not a good student at that point. He was doing a lot of stuff with activism. He was spending a lot of time with his friends. He was learning a lot more about politics, and he really wasn't focused very much on the law degree. So he did not finish it. Now, at this time, he is going to run into some people that are going to be part of a group called the African National Congress. You should chat about that stuff in the public channels. I'd be interested. I feel like that might be problematic. We've had some issue in the past with debate on the Discord for a little while. Because we're all middle-aged white men in America, we were thinking about having a podcast where all we did was sit around and argue with each other. And you saying that reminds me of us going like, hey, we should have a podcast where all we do is sit around and argue with each other. We are, all of us, uber nerds. Anyway, African National Congress. Now, he is going to join the African National Congress. This was a group that was political in drive, but not political in action, because at that time there were no real ways for black Africans to get involved in politics or the government as it was anyway, because of the apartheid system that had been, so effectively put in place. But that doesn't mean that they don't try. And what they've tried to do here is organize people. They want to do protests. They want to do public speaking events. They want to raise awareness. They want to lobby international agencies and groups to get involved in South Africa. And there's stuff where they try to, lobby foreign governments to put pressure on South Africa. They do a lot of letter writing campaigns. People even go to England, of course, because, England was the sovereign nation of South Africa for quite some time. And I guess still technically is, maybe. I can't remember what their actual status is at the moment. But anyway, I think they're a lot more like Canada now. So there we go, right? There's a lot of movement to be done here, and he wanted to be involved in the movement. So much so that he is going to be instrumental in forming a youth branch of the ANC. So this is ANCY, African National Congress Youth Branch, which was designed to recruit young people that were trying to get into politics or think politically. Now, in his particular time period right now, he has some fairly interesting beliefs. So this is like 1942, 1943. And at that time, he had taken a little bit of an issue with the ANC because some of the leadership of the ANC had decided that anybody that wanted equality should be able to join the ANC. That included white people, and that included communists. Now, how much pressure was he offering to try to keep communists or white people out of this? We don't really know. He was instrumental, but he was a junior partner at this point. Still very new to the game, definitely hip with the young kids, but sort of tangentially related to some of the power broker people at the top of the ANC. But it seemed like at that point, his ideas were that the people that are pushing for African equality should just be Africans. And then they shouldn't be communist again, because he claims again that he didn't like the communists being involved because of the atheist angle. That will change in a while, but right now in the early 40s, there you go. Could make it a subs chat, perhaps. South Africa is still a Commonwealth member, but it's a republic. Yeah, I thought it was sort of larger, like Canada-esque. Anyway, around this time in 44, he is going to marry his first wife. His first wife's name is Evelyn. So they get married in 44. They're going to have 2 children pretty quickly. His oldest son, named Timbu, and his youngest son, or his eldest daughter, actually dies not too long after this. I don't even think she makes it to her first birthday. I think she's like 8 months old when she dies. But the relationship is going to be very good at the beginning, but it starts fraying pretty quickly because Nelson was becoming much more political and he was becoming much more active. And over the course of the next few years, the middle 40s and then into the late 40s, he's going to move up the ranks in the ANC. And he's going to get into kind of like the junior leading ranks. So you have like the president and you have like the big secretaries, but then you have like branches of the party and stuff like that. So he's in the leadership, but at that point he was not in the senior leadership. But this is going to be a lot of effort. He's going to bring a lot of stuff to this. He's going to be doing this pretty much as a job. What's up, Radical Disability? Yeah, it has been a while. I'm doing pretty well. How are you? Hope things are going great in your world. So one of the things that happens as he's getting into the leadership position in the ANC is that he kind of understands why a lot of these people were bringing in non-Africans into the ANC, and he understands why they were bringing in communists to the ANC. And his position on the ANC being Africans only is going to fade away over the course of the late 40s, and he's going to really start kind of leaning into the communism. And if we are going to take his autobiography as proof, which we can, but let's remember, and by the way here, it doesn't matter who wrote the autobiography. Autobiographies are inherently biased, right? If I wrote a biography, it would literally be from my point of view. And we all know that over the course of a lifetime, our way of thinking about things changes, our view on past events change, etc., etc. So with any autobiography, you got to be at least a little bit willing to look at other sources. Now, I'm not saying don't read autobiographies. Go read them. They're great primary sources. We just got to remember to look at other events and compare and cross-list, build your case, right? So in his autobiography, Mandela is going to say that the reason he got behind communism as a potential solution for the South African situation was because they had this larger concept of a classless society, right? A society where everybody was still equal and everybody was in the same boat. And according to his interpretation, when he compared communism to the traditional African culture, like the culture of Timbuland, where he was raised, he saw in his native culture this sort of classless society, and he said that should be the way that the government operated. Now, I will have to say that there's an interesting point of reference here, that he, Nelson Mandela, was from families on both sides, his mother and his father's family, from the controlling royal or noble structure of his tribe. So there's an interesting question to ask if he thought his own tribe and indeed his own family should give up their position to make a more classless society, because clearly even in his own family and his own group there were class delineations. I'm not trying to, I think Nelson Mandela is a pretty cool guy, but at this particular time in his life, if he's saying that all African society was tribal and classless, that might not be even directly backed up by his own tribal people. It's worth thinking about here, right? So, WEPA. I don't even know what WEPA means. You're dealing a lot with. Like dealing with a lot. Oh, I got you. I'm sorry that you're dealing with a lot. I know that the world sometimes decides to just pile on. And I know that, especially in the last few years, man, it just seems like life doesn't wait for us to be ready for stuff. It just kind of just goes at it. But I hope you can at least see the exit ramp out from under the dog pile that might be on top of you right now. And always know that we've got people that are hanging around in the Discord or here in chat that are willing to listen and got your back on stuff. So I hope the world treats you better. And I hope that whatever you're dealing with is broken into pieces that are manageable and then properly escorted off the premises, right? But I know how you feel. The world is a mean place sometimes. So I don't know what else to say about that. That's all I have to say about that. Anyway, so gets into communism, says that it's because of the classless value stuff, and he starts giving public speeches. And this is where he's going to start getting arrested. A lot. He starts giving public speeches that start talking about equality and saying stuff like all of the races should be equal and we shouldn't have a ruling party that is lording over everybody with all the controls of the land or all of the money or all of the controls of the industry, which was an accurate description of what South Africa was. But of course, if you're the South African government and we're post-World War II, this guy looks like a communist. And to be fair, he was a communist at this point. He said that he never joined the party. There were documents released where, this is after his death, where some of the people that were pretty closely involved in the larger running of the ANC showed fairly conclusively that probably in the mid-50s, this guy was like in the Communist Party, and even says in his own autobiography that he appreciated the way that Castro was running Cuba, and he backed down on Taiwan being an independent country when the communist Chinese government said that he should. And he wanted to go to Russia and spent a lot of time reading communist writers. So is it okay that he was a communist? I don't know. Are you a communist? Is it okay that you're a communist? I think that communism is an ideology that has a lot of value in it if you look at it on the face. I don't think that communism is Stalinism. I don't think that Mao Zedong was a good communist either. I also don't think that communism would work on a country-sized platform. I just don't think that it scales up that way. If you want to live in an agrarian society that's got maybe 200 people in it, I think you can probably make communism work on that scale. But I don't think it works when you can't know everybody involved and trust everybody involved, because at that point you're just going to end up getting taken advantage of, right? So my friend Sarah has a t-shirt that literally says literally a communist. Well, there we go, Kelly. Also, Kelly, how's it going? Hope you're having a good one. I left you Weepa in your DM in Discord. It is the song of my people. Okay, cool. Well, there we go. Communism works well in theory, much like capitalism. Vipers with the hot take. I don't even know if that's necessarily a hot take. I don't know if capitalism works well in theory either. If you look at pure unrestrained capitalism, we actually had that. We actually did that for most of the Industrial Revolution, and I think it was a fairly poor experiment in how badly one group of people will treat another group of people. And I think the secret that nobody wants to say is, even America that claims that we're a capitalist nation, we're not even really a capitalist economy. We are a mixed market economy based on the actual definition of economic structures, because we have elements of command economy, we have elements of socialist economy, and we have elements of capitalist economy. If we had pure capitalism here, there would be no EPA, there would be no OSHA, there would be no mandatory minimum wage, there would be no days off. We don't have a pure capitalist economy. It's just the way that it goes. But I know we're not supposed to talk about that. I need to get on with it. We've got a long way to go and not a lot of time to get there. Anyway, so he's going to get arrested multiple times for talking about communism. He's going to actually pass the bar exam. He's going to get a 2-year stint at a law degree. He's going to wrap up his law degree and pass the bar with a little bit of help. He's got some people that are working with him to try to get him past the bar exam, and he's going to open up his own law firm. This is Mandela and Tambo. And this particular law firm that he opens with his friend is basically going to make a lot of waves, because he's almost universally going to serve African people, and does so in a specific way to challenge the laws of the land. And this is going to, end up causing a lot of stir. It's also during this period of time that his relationship with his first wife, Evelyn, is going to get particularly rocky. Evelyn accuses him of adultery, which may or may not have been founded. I don't know if we conclusively know that he was in an adulterous relationship, but she ends up moving back to where she's from natively, and in 1957 they're going to get a divorce, and the next year he is going to marry this lady. This is Winnie. No Days Off for the Poor. Oh, that's true. Hey, you Lumpy, what's up? How's it going? He marries Winnie in 1958, and they're going to be married for quite some time. So she'll be in the picture for basically the majority of the rest of the stream. Now, he doesn't make a lot of friends as a lawyer, especially in the political world and with the police. He's going to continue to be arrested multiple times, and he's even going to receive, as a punishment in a court, a ban on speaking in public. So at this point, they didn't have laws that guaranteed the right of being able to speak in public. So he was barred from speaking in public multiple times for stretches of sometimes up to 2 years, where he could not do public appearances and speak. This is partially because he had become a very recognizable part of the ANC. And this is when things are going to get sort of like kind of the big time, right? Lumpy, how did your reaction go yesterday? Also, if you're not following Lumpy Dragon Potato, you should. You got to go give this guy a follow, hang out in his world of Fanriel, watch him build Minecraft stuff, be lulled by the dulcet sounds of his potato voice. You're good, heavy chemistry days, but all is well. There we go. So, in 1956, he gets arrested for high treason. And this is a pretty severe charge, right? This is one of those, like, you might end up getting killed charges. It went according to plan, 100% success. Excellent. Excellent, Lumpy. That is great. I know that you were not worried, but you had a proper amount of concern about it, and I'm glad that it turned out well. Knock 'em dead, my friend. So, the trial for high treason is going to take quite a while to go through. It's going to be... So he gets arrested in 56. This is going to go through multiple levels of the court. There are going to be lots of lawyers that are involved. The government gets involved directly, of course, as they are the damaged party, according to the charges. And it's going to get all the way up to the Supreme Court of South Africa. And this is going to go from 1956 all the way to 1961. So almost 5 years of this being an issue. And he ends up spending a lot of that time in jail, because when he first gets arrested, they put him in jail for a while. He spends at least 2 or 3 of these years. Well, two. At one point, he spent 2 years in jail, and then he was in jail, in and out of jail a couple of times between all of these other things. So it takes all the way up until 1961 for the Supreme Court to hear the case and hear the arguments and make their decision. And he gets free. He has the charges dismissed against him. He is found not guilty for the crime of high treason. Now, this is going to change Nelson Mandela. The charges themselves were only technically, potentially correct. There was not necessarily a justifiable reason for a lot of these things. The court were the police structure and the government was clearly trying to stick it to him at this point. He was becoming a very vocal opponent. He was getting a lot of attention. He was causing trouble. He was rabble-rousing. He was being a problem child, if we remember his original name, right? Troublemaker. So he's going to sort of have a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy moment where he decides to go underground. And he basically like disappears from public sight for a little while. And he is going to be responsible for putting together a group called the Spear of the Nation. And I'm not going to try to say the South African actual words for this, but here's their logo. Yes, I can't say that well, but that's the nation, and it's referred to very frequently as just MK. Yeah, I'm sure you probably can say that better than I can, but I'm not even going to give it a shot. It's just Spear of the Nation. And to a certain way, that's devaluing it, and I recognize that me saying, I'm not going to say that in the natural tongue because I can't say that, is sort of a potentially racist thing. It's not coming from that angle. It's me trying to be respectful of the fact that I can't pronounce it correctly. So there we go. Anyway, what is up with this group? Well, they are, first off, armed, and they are, second off, openly avowed communists. And make no mistake here, he formed it and he was the head of it. Now, why does this group even exist? Well, it exists because Mandela at this point had become fairly convinced that the only way to get equality in South Africa was to cause more trouble than the government wanted to deal with. And this is going to turn into, and I'm going to say a word here that a lot of people have connotations for, but it's the truth. This turns into a terrorist organization. Because one of the things that Mandela wanted to do with this group was cause so much disruption that the government itself would basically lose efficacy. Now, there's qualification to this. Of course there are, because human beings are very rarely just one-dimensional. Mandela, as the director of this, had some very clear statements. Number one, he did not want this to target people. He did not want people to be killed in their acts. And basically what they're going to do is a lot of bombings and sabotage. But while he was directly in charge of the group, he tried to do his absolute best to plan around when people would be at places. He did not want anybody to be directly targeted, so there were like no assassinations, there were no targeted car bombings of particular people. The vast majority of the targets for the bombings and the sabotage were things that were like power plants, substations, some industrial works, people that, places that were involved in keeping the government running. And this was an underground armed terrorist group. So basically Project Mayhem. Yeah, kind of like that. That's actually a fairly apt metaphor. They were just trying to cause a ton of trouble. Now, does that make him a communist terrorist? Yeah, it does. Does that make him the same as Lenin or Stalin? No, it doesn't. Does that make him the same as Mao or Pol Pot? No, it doesn't. But we have to admit that the stuff that he was doing with Spear of the Nation was designed to cause trouble and terror, and he was doing so as an openly communist group. I think it's also worth remembering that Weber teaches us in Politics as a Vocation that the state has a monopoly on force, which is why we don't tend to call apartheid itself a terrorist act. That is a fair assessment, Vipers. Let me unpack exactly what that particular point is saying here. What Vipers is offering here is a clarification on exactly what was happening in South Africa. The apartheid government, and I stated this earlier, but let me reiterate this at this point. the apartheid government was a vast minority of the population. A vast minority. They owned the overwhelmingly large amount of the land. They owned all of the large manufacturing centers. They were the government. They were the military. They were the police. And they knew that they were outnumbered, and they had been conducting violent acts themselves. So I'm not trying to say that one side here was the bad guy and the other side was the good guy. What I would hope to have portrayed in this particular situation here is that because the South African government that was being run by a openly violent white minority was causing such oppression to the African people, that Mandela, who avowed himself as a Methodist and believed in God and had a very strong moral compass, thought that the only way to get these people to react to the fact that they were being so violent was to sort of meet them with the same force that they were dishing out. And I do think that there is an important distinction that needs to be made here, where the government would send the military out or send the police out to especially places where there were disputes between white settlers and native Africans on tribal land, and inevitably what would end up happening is violence being used against native African people. So I'm not by any means here trying to take away that the African people were being violently oppressed by the South African government. I'm just trying to make it clear here that a person that most people don't think of as communist or terrorist saw that as one of the only options available to him to get freedom and equality for his people. So I hope that at this point I've been clear enough about that. This is again why I tried my best and spent a lot of time reading and got Nelson Mandela's autobiography, and I was really trying to get through all of this stuff, and I wanted to see his point of view and look at other points of view, because this is another one of those situations where history gets defined by its end, and because it gets defined by its end, a lot of the stuff in the arc of history gets glossed over. And I think it's important to look at the entire arc for individual validity of action along the way, and then we can celebrate at the end when there is equality. But it's important for us to understand the whole story of how we got there. And that's always what I try to do when I teach history stuff, right? So I think that it's worth mentioning these things, and I'm not trying to character assassinate Nelson Mandela. Again, I think that if that dude were still alive, we would hang out and have a great time talking. He seemed like a pretty cool guy. There were in some pretty crappy situations, and he took some pretty crappy steps to try to get out of it. So, there we go. Anyway, so he's going to sneak himself out of the country in 1962. And he's going to forge some papers to get himself out, because he wasn't supposed to be leaving the country. He didn't want people to know that he was leaving the country, and he spent about a year and a half touring a lot of other countries in Africa. And the purpose of this particular trip in 62 was to basically try to collect funds and make contacts for his group, MK, Spirit of the Nation. He wanted to collect money to buy arms, or arms themselves. He wanted to make connections with other other people that were under colonial rule that were trying to gain freedom, as a way of creating solidarity and sharing intelligence and materials and monies. And he also wanted to talk to other heads of state, especially African heads of state that had managed to get out from under colonialization at that point, and there weren't very many that were doing very well. And one of the things that he was trying to do at this time was figure out, what do we do if we win? What do we even do if we take over? What if we do get equality and freedom and all of this stuff? How do you run a country then? Because that ends up happening to a lot of revolutions. They take over and then they go, what do we do now? Right? And look at what happened to the French Revolution. They went through, 7 different governments in the span of like 13 years because somebody would take over and they'd go, okay, what now? Right? So, he's traveling around Africa. He's meeting with all these people. What does the dog do when it finally catches the car? Right. It has a vote in Kansas that gets shot down like 70% to 30%. But you'll get that joke if you know what happened in Kansas. So he is going to try to sneak his way back into South Africa, and he's going to get arrested. Now, he's going to get put on trial for inciting riots and for illegally forging papers to leave the country. And he's going to get found guilty. He's going to be found guilty, and he's going to spend 5 years in prison for this. And this is in 1962. Now, this is not the end of the story. It gets pretty much worse for him, because while he's in jail, the police are going to raid one of the headquarters of his Spear of the Nation groups, right? And when they raid that headquarters, they're going to find lists of names, contacts, information, planning material. Basically, they're going to find it all, right? And that's really bad. Let's see what Viper shared here. During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. That's a great quote. And I think that sort of sums up a lot of what he was doing, right? The conclusion of his 3-hour speech in the Rivonia trial. Yeah. So, the Rivonia trial. So that's what we're sort of heading towards here. Now, the Rivonia trial is the big one. And so he's already in jail for leaving the country illegally. The police are going to raid his one of his group's hideouts. They're going to get all this information. And now he's on a new trial. And specifically here, he's once again on trial for treason. And he's specifically on trial, and they're adding this to it, conspiracy to overthrow the government. And this is something that has a potential life sentence or a potential death sentence. And at this point, Mandela is basically going to understand that he's going to jail for this, right? He's going to understand that he's not getting out of this one. So he ends up defending himself for the trial because, again, he's got law experience, right? So he's not doing this wrongly. But he uses his defense as basically a calling card or a poster board for his entire platform. And he's going to put forward his ideas. He's going to champion his causes. He's going to give the quote that Viper's just shared here. And the trial, as we all know, is going to put him in jail under a life sentence. Now, it is notable that they could have killed him, but they didn't. Part of the reason I suspect, and this is speculation, be aware that I'm speculating here, I feel like one of the reasons that they didn't kill him is because killing him might have set off a bomb, not just a figurative bomb, but a literal bomb, because his trial was pretty widely disseminated amongst people. It wasn't shown on TV or anything like that, but people knew what was going on, and a lot of people had been going and doing court recording and things like that, and sharing the stuff that had come out of the trial That's how we, have records of him doing stuff like this, saying his quotes and things like that. So it would basically turn him into a martyr. We don't want a martyr, especially when things are already going kind of crazy. Because, interesting thing to note here, when he goes to jail, he's going to be sent to Robben Island prison and spend a lot of his life in this room right here. This is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and this is pretty much the way that he spent about a decade and a half of his life. It's fair to note that he did get a bed eventually, but that was a lot later. So, while he's in jail, Spear of the Nation is going to ramp up the attacks. And while he's not there, they're going to start attacking situations and people are going to start dying. The bombings and the targeting of particular locations is done with a more open and violent air. And when Mandela himself is not there to kind of keep reins on people and keep them in line, they end up killing people. Now, I'm not trying to say that this was Mandela's fault, that this is clear. He's not running things secretly from prison like some mafia boss. He's actually pretty frequently on lockdown or in solitary confinement, so there's no way he's the one targeting people or causing collateral damage that kills people. This is being done in his name and not by him. I want to make that really, really clear. And when he does finally hear about this stuff, he actually tries to get people to back off. But he, for a long time, wasn't even allowed to send letters. And then when he was allowed to send letters, he was basically allowed like one letter a month or something like that. It wasn't a lot. He was the 466th prisoner admitted to Robben Island Penitentiary in 1964, which is why he associated with his prisoner number 4664. There you go. 46664. And we'll talk about the AIDS charity, which kicks in after his presidency, but we'll get there. All right, so he is in prison in Robben Island. And this is where he's going to spend about the next 2 decades. Now, what's going on while he's in prison? Well, he actually tries while he's in prison to de-radicalize other people that were in prison. A lot of the leadership of the ANC is going to end up in prison with him. A lot of people that were young members of the ANC that might have also been part of Spirit of the Nation are going to end up in prison with him. And he's going to try to talk these people out of being super violent. He also develops a love for gardening, which, when you're in prison, you don't really have too much else to do, but becomes a pretty avid gardener. But he's got a very limited efficacy because, again, he doesn't get to fraternize a lot with other prisoners. He spends a lot of time in solitary confinement. He doesn't have a lot of outside contact. For a long time, he can't have outside contact. He gets no visitation from the outside. He's going to, when he finally does get up to the point where he was able to get outside visitors, he's going to start trying to do stuff like smuggle messages out, including things like his autobiography. So, like, while he was in prison, he was writing an autobiography. And he tried to smuggle that stuff out. The guards are actually going to catch him with some of those pages, and he basically loses all of his privileges again and doesn't get to see anybody from the outside for like 4 years. And while he's in prison, what's really interesting is that the international community is going to begin to recognize what he was up to, especially once news of his trial gets out and his defense for himself gets out, and the ANC starts once again lobbying international groups to, increase knowledge of what's going on here. There are a lot of people in the world that knew who Nelson Mandela was in 65, 66, all the way up through, the 60s and 70s. But there were actually quite a few people that were very much against him getting out of prison. So the ANC ended up on terrorist lists. The government of the United States considered the ANC a terrorist organization. And when lobbied to support Nelson Mandela's freedom, Ronald Reagan called him a terrorist and said that he would not support the ANC's effort to get him released. The same is true of Margaret Thatcher in England, who initially, now she does come around a little bit later, but I think it's mostly after she's trying to save face in her own party after the economy got so bad at the end of her. Anyway, that's other politics. She eventually comes around to support Mandela, but I don't think it was out of altruism. But for a long time, Margaret Thatcher considered the ANC a terrorist organization and would not support his release either. So they're going to other countries. They're trying to raise a lot of awareness. And after a long time, it's not until 1982. So he goes in 64. It's not until 82 that he gets moved to a less secure prison called Polesmore. I cannot type. Polesmore. I think I put an extra E in there. Yeah, there's no E right there. So, it's also a palindrome. What's a palindrome? Oh, 46664. Being visited by the puppy again. Hello, puppy. What are you doing, puppy? You're just coming to say hello? Give me some arm sugars. Oh my goodness. Look at the little derpy waggly tail back there. Do you want to come up here? You come and see me? Hello. Oh my goodness. That's a good girl. Oh yes, a good puppy. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. What? You gonna talk to me? Woo. Twizzard! Woo! You all came in when the puppy was on screen. You want to come back up here? You want to come and see everybody? Come see the Raiders. Come here. Come here. Come here. I don't know what you're saying. I don't speak puppy. I don't speak furtive puppy-a-woo. What do you want? Do you need to go outside? You gotta go see Brittany. Woo woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. For those of you that don't know who I am, hello, my name is Shane. I am a college history and sociology teacher, and we talk history here on the stream, but we don't do it in the boring way like you might have experienced in the past. Dun, 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 dun. Twizzard, thank you so much, my friend. So yeah, we talk history, and tonight we're doing viewer request, and the particular viewer request is Nelson Mandela, and we're talking about his whole world and all the fun stuff that he got involved in. For those of you that do not know, Talk to the Twizzard and Eris, this guy and this cat. Dun, 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 dun. This guy and this cat have one of the most innovative call-in shows that I've ever seen on Twitch. And I'm not just saying that because I just rated. It really is fascinating. I talked to my wife about this the other day. You can call in to their show, and you can play a very refined version of what is kind of like D&D on the phone with the Twizzard and Eris. And it's amazing. It's really fun. It's fun to watch. People get involved. They get, killed by stuff like Medusas. They have falling rock traps fall on their head. It's good times. There's fun little commentary that goes along with it. Medusae. I guess that would be the plural of Medusas. Anyway, go give these great people a follow. Let me catch up with everybody and make sure that I say hello. Eris, good to see you. By the way, my wife thinks that you have the most adorable voice of any person on Twitch. Tropical says that the puppy wants to go out. Indeed. Aristotle went to a BDSM event this weekend and introduced yourself as Shane McInnes and plugged my channel. If you were at a BDSM convention and you were doing plugging, I don't know if I approve of that. As long as everybody was consenting, I think it's okay, though. It's Biffit. Yeah, I stream. Welcome. Be cool to get a call from you sometime. Man, I'll be honest. I'll consider it. The issue here is, like, I would want to, like, have this whole thing where I, like, had this backstory and stuff, and my brain hasn't put something together yet. I'll give it a shot, though. I'll give it a shot. E-Train, what up? Is the best, most fun stream on Twitch? Well, there we go. E-Train approved. The cat is out. All right, yeah, so we're talking about Nelson Mandela, and we are in 1982 when he was moved from Robben Island Prison to Pollsmoor Prison, which was actually a good thing because Robben Island is a pretty bad prison, and Pollsmoor, while still being a prison, is much less intense. And it's around this time that he's still in prison, right? And he's got some he's got some years left on the sentence because he's serving a life sentence, right? Robben Island cell size 18 years, 8x7. Pollsmoor cell size 21x17. Yeah, so there we go. He's got actual space there. People do have backstories and characters. Yeah, I know. I would want to, like, make mine, and I would want to, like, write out the backstory, and I would want to have, like, funny little catch lines and things like that. I don't do things, like, halfway. I'd want to go in, like, I don't know what that is, like, but you know what I mean. And I haven't made an effort to sit down and come up with something. So that's what I should do. I should make that a point. He's a fan of Tolkien. Leave it at that. That's a fair assessment, right? I need Legendarium. My characters need appendices. Yeah, that's an accurate assessment, KP. I appreciate you summing up this. It's cool to know that I exist outside of Smite's Discord, right? Well, I occasionally pop in Smite Knight's Discord and try to throw facts at people and then get yelled at for being, I don't know, whatever the devil I am in there. Okay, so anyway, Pollsmoor. Now, the international attention on Mandela is just growing. And at this time, this guy, this is President Botha, who was the president of South Africa at the time, is going to be under a lot of scrutiny. A lot of people want him to let Nelson Mandela go, let him free, and let him get back to the ANC. By the way, at this point, the African National Congress, the political party that Mandela was trying to get started, had been outlawed as a terrorist organization. So they want him to let the ANC back in and let Mandela out of jail. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. E-Train, thank you so much for that, and welcome to the adventure. So, Botha decides, I'm going to give this guy an opportunity. And he sends Mandela a message and says, look, I will release you from prison. This, by the way, 1985. I will release you from prison if you unconditionally revoke the concept of violence and you absolutely give up all forms of communism. So basically, if you say that you will never do anything violent ever again, you unconditionally take violence off the table as a way to potentially create change in the government. And if you give up communism, I'll let you out. And Mandela goes, no thanks, I'll be fine in prison. Now, that's a pretty gutsy move, right? No thanks, I'll be fine in prison. Now, as you might expect, this causes ripple effects, and they are significant. There are tons of protests after this. The people that are involved in the ANC movement, who are still technically meeting even though they're not supposed to, are going to organize really big protests. And the government is going to respond to this with, wait for it, the military, right? They're not going to just send out police, they're going to send out armed military to put down some of these protests. I really love political history as a poli-sci philosophy dual major. Hey, dude. This is a good, like you said, this has got a lot of interesting overlap between philosophy and politics. Read Mandela's autobiography, just to be honest, go read the Wikipedia page for this guy. There's a lot of good information even there. I teach college, and some people are like, well, you must hate Wikipedia. Heck no, I love that junk. It's free information. And by this point, there are so many... what's the male version of a Karen? There are so many data Karens on Wikipedia that you might be able to change something to wrong, but it will get flagged and rechanged within an hour and a half, 2 hours, especially on something like Nelson Mandela. And you don't stop at Wikipedia, right? You go read Wikipedia, then you look at the sources that they cite, and you go dig up those sources, and you go on from there, right? So, there you go. Anyway, so there's a lot of attention. There's a lot of protesting going on. There's a lot of really, really messy stuff that's happening because of this. Now, 86 is a rough year at South Africa. There's a lot of violence. There is a lot of bombing stuff that's being ramped up. There are a lot of people that are being arrested. There's a lot of military targeting civilian stuff going on. It's really messy. Enter this gentleman. This guy is Kobe Ketsi. And he was, at the time, the South African Minister of Justice. Now, he's going to recognize that something probably needs to be done. And he is going to sneak into visit Mandela in prison. And after a couple of meetings with Mandela directly, he's then going to start sneaking in other members of the government that are going to be high-ranking people in the political parties and other junior ministers. And they're really going to start talking about what could happen and how to get Mandela out of prison. You have Wiki PTSD, like your professors and high school teachers say never use Wiki, so it's going to be hard for you to accept it. Well, again, you don't accept it and then stop. You read it and you get a basis of knowledge. You look at the sources that they have, and then you go find the sources, you read those sources, and then you see what those sources cite. And this is research, right? It's a snowball effect. But if your snowball starts with Wikipedia, that's perfectly fine, as long as your snowball doesn't end with Wikipedia, right? Wiki's like a GPS. That's a great way of looking at it, right? It's like it just starts telling you where to go, right? Who to go look for, who to go read about, who to go research. I like Wiki as a GPS, Tropical. That's a great metaphor there. Britannica's fine too. There's a lot of stuff out there. We have this great, amazing thing that has the confluence of all human knowledge in one place. It's called the internet, and it's like some kind of web that reaches around the world, right? And what words to look for in English? Yeah, exactly. So, in 88, the government makes another offer. They say, okay, Mandela, we will let you out if you give up violence, you give up communism, and they added this new one on, you give up the idea of majority rule. And this one is something that I really want to focus here. Like, one of the conditions of Mandela being released from prison was him agreeing not to argue for majority rule. Like, what the mess is democratic principle based on, right? Oh, you can't argue for a majority rule. We've got to have whites in charge. Do you think no, this is like, no, he's never going to agree to that. Of course he rejects this. Now, at that point, Botha is going to end up having some health issues, and he's going to step down. And we're going to get this guy in charge. This is a new president named de Klerk. No, it's tubes, you Luddite. The internet is a series of tubes. I remember someone saying, I hate Wikipedia, I loathe Wikipedia, I am fundamentally, philosophically opposed to Wikipedia, I use it several times a day. That might have been me. I mean, I don't like it. I don't know, I don't think I said that. Because I don't think I've ever said that I loathe Wikipedia. I do hate that people use it and then stop there. I don't think I'd ever say that I was philosophically opposed to it either. I don't know. Who said that? Did I say that? I don't think I said that. If I did, I need to take that back. How I feel about a lot of things. It breathes to Shane's spirit, but it does not speak his voice, right? Okay, there we go. It wasn't me. All right. It wasn't me. So, de Klerk. De Klerk. Anyway, that was a bad joke. You met them before they were famous. Well, that's cool. De Klerk was confused by forwarded emails. I don't doubt it. Anyway, so the government of South Africa reorganizes under this guy named F.W. de Klerk. And in 1990, he is going to cave to international and local pressure, and he's going to re-legalize the ANC, and he's going to free Nelson Mandela from prison. Now, Mandela and de Klerk are going to begin a series of talks which take years. There's a talk in 91 that gets nothing accomplished. There's a talk in 92 that Mandela basically walks out of. And when he walks out of it, this was a kind of a flash in the pan moment because the violence escalates precipitously. And Mandela is actually trying in 92 to go around to different parts of South Africa to try to keep people from doing violent stuff, to try to get the government off the backs of these people. And he's actively at this point arguing for non-violence. Got to run, have a very educational time, hope we can stay longer. Absolutely, Twizzard, take it easy. Thank you so much for the raid. I'll try to come up with a backstory. And maybe I can unclench my butt cheeks a little bit and just have some fun with it, but we'll see. We'll see. I saw Aristotle come in, and I've seen him chat a couple of times, and he's even, talked and stuff, and I've said hello, but I didn't give him a shout out. Go follow Aristotle. He's a really smart guy. He teaches college as well. He does philosophy. He apparently talks about BDSM stuff and uses my name in BDSM parties and plugs my channel. So there we go. It's all fun and games, right? So the talks in 92 don't go anywhere. Violence blows up across the country. Mandela tries to go calm everybody down, and it doesn't work. So he realizes that what he has to do is sit back down at the table with de Klerk. And he's pretty blunt. There are more talks in 93, and he's like, look, here's the deal. We're not getting anywhere. You're going to have to back down. You're going to have to allow everybody to vote. You're going to have to do it because it's the only way that you're going to come out of this looking like a human being. And clearly people aren't going to just let apartheid hang around. So there is a very famous 1993 agreement. Now, this agreement is not a perfect agreement for either side, but it is a step in the right direction. So the biggest thing is that de Klerk is going to agree to allow everybody to vote that fits voting qualifications, and he knows that this is almost certainly going to mean the end of apartheid, the minority rule situation. Now, he does get some of his concessions met, specifically with how land ownership is going to be dealt with, how property, especially industrial property and stuff like means of production, is going to be distributed, and he's going to get some concessions on the rights of white people to own things, and there's going to be a federal system involved where the country is going to be broken up into states because some of the states had higher white populations than others, but in none of the states were whites a majority. But he thought that if there was a federal system, there might be some chance that some white people might be able to hold on to some kind of political power. So, there we go. Now, this is a big deal. The 1993 agreement is going to be huge. And it wins de Klerk and Mandela the Nobel Peace Prize.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus. JM Killer. What's up, my friend? Sorry you're late. It's all good. Thank you so much for that sub, and thanks for the support. If you're not already following JMR Killer, you know that I build Gundams. This guy builds Gundams too. You know that I talk about video games a lot. JMR actually plays video games. Go give him a follow at the Gaming Fort. Have some fun. Hang out with this guy. He's a good streamer, and you'll have a good time. Plugs, yes. It's all fun in games until someone forgets the safe word. There we go. There we go. No one is bored hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I'm glad that you actually mentioned that one, because the reason I picked Xhosa to the heart is because of that quote, talking about the human heart. And I was going to kind of bring that full circle, but Vipers beat me to it. I'm doing pretty well. It's been a long day. It's been kind of a rough day, but I've had a good time streaming. I'm surrounded by good friends. I'm getting a lot of good vibes from the chat, so I'm feeling pretty great. No. It's good. You keep doing your thing. It's fine. It's better if it actually comes from you than me, because, well, I mean, that way it looks like I am at least doing something right, because I'm not just the only person talking. There are other people saying the same kind of thing, right? And here comes Tuna to ruin the vibes. What up, Tuna? Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. That's a good one. Let me show you that picture right here. So this is in 1994. And what we see here is Nelson Mandela casting a vote. And how crazy is this picture given all of the stuff that had happened previous. This is a pretty powerful picture if you know the backstory. And you all do know the backstory now. So that's a pretty powerful picture, and I'm really glad that I got to share that one. Now, there are elections. They are elections in 64. De Klerk is gone because the ANC wins 63% of the vote. Now, this is great. This is an unqualified success. So this is like a fully funded Kickstarter campaign, right? Now, they had some stretch goals. If they could have gotten to 67%, they would have had enough votes to unilaterally write and change the Constitution. They didn't get there, though, but they are going to get to pick the president, the ruling cabinet. Now, one thing that Mandela had done as a concession to de Klerk was guaranteed certain positions inside the government to be filled by white people. And this was not a very popular decision. In fact, a lot of people in the ANC were really, really pissed off at Mandela for making a lot of these concessions in the first place, because they wanted basically all or nothing, and him giving concessions to de Klerk and the white population was seen by many people as a betrayal of the African people. And a lot of people on both sides were very upset with this particular arrangement. I don't know the backstory, just got here. Can you start over? I could, or we could wait till the end and then you could watch the VOD. Democracy is amazing. More democracy, please. Yes, absolutely. Let's do some democracy stuff. So he is going to be the first black head of state, and as a show of reconciliation, he's going to appoint de Klerk as one of the deputy president positions. So this is sort of like vice president of the parliament. This is a big deal. He gets criticized like mad by his own party for doing this stuff, but what he saw was an opportunity to build a bridge instead of burning a bridge, right? And this is going to be an important moment. It always seems impossible until it's done, right? Now, everything is not super great in 94 and 95 for him. His relationship with his second wife, Winnie, had degraded rather precipitously after he got out of jail. She had been tied to a lot of direct violence. Like, she had organized a lot of violent activity. She had been arrested for several things and had been put on trial for a lot of things. And to sort of give more backstory to this particular relationship, he had been told multiple times for more than a decade to divorce her by his people in his own political party, but he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But when he saw that she was directly involved in a lot of these violent activities, he's going to get a divorce from her as well. Now, this is going to launch him on his path towards reconciliation, right? Yeah, setting an example for reconciliation, correct. Well, you have to get half the loaf before you get the rest of it. There you go. Not a Nelson Mandela quote, a Maya Angelou this time. You should be angry. You must not be bitter. Bitterness is like cancer. It eats upon the host. It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure. So use that anger. You write it. You paint it. You dance it. You march it. You vote it. You do everything about it. You talk it. Never stop talking it. That's good stuff. That Maya Angelou should be a poet. She's got a way with words. I know. Anyway, when I taught English and I got to teach poetry, one of the things that I always like to do in Deep South Alabama was have my English classes read "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings." And talk about that. So, there we go. Anyway, Mandela's plans for reconciliation are going to get criticism from both sides. Him reaching out to white population in South Africa was going to get criticism. The fact that he was black was going to get him criticism from the other side. But at this point, he's really going to do whatever he thought was necessary to try to get stuff towards a working, functional system where everybody could live together. And there's a pretty important image right here. And I don't know exactly how to explain this if I didn't spend another 20 minutes telling the entire story. But very basically, this is a picture of Nelson Mandela here giving the Rugby World Cup to the South African rugby captain. And this particular moment is one of those moments that kind of transcends just what it was. a lot of people in South Africa considered this whole thing to be, like they had abandoned white people. They didn't care about white people at all. The new government was all run by black people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when South Africa won and Mandela wanted to personally deliver the cup, this is a big thing. It's a really big moment. And it really had a lot of ramifications to see a picture of Nelson Mandela honoring a white South African guy for accomplishing something that was pretty impressive. Like winning the Rugby World Cup is a pretty big deal. I don't know how many people like rugby or how many people watch rugby, but it's one of the more popular sports in the world. And this was a big accomplishment. And this photo and the videos of him doing this that got out on TV, this is one of the more powerful moments of reconciliation that happened. And yeah, there's a movie that's got Matt Damon and didn't shoot, I can't remember who played. Was it? Yeah, it was Morgan Freeman. I was about to say Morgan Freeman. Yeah, so Morgan Freeman played Nelson Mandela. It was a pretty good movie. It was a pretty good one. So check it out if you're interested in this larger story. And the movie actually does go into some of the political history and some of the ethnic tension and some of the racial issues. So it's a pretty good movie. I actually kind of want to watch it again now. God played Nelson Mandela. Exactly. It's a pretty good movie, though. It's called Invictus, and it's named after a particular poem by the poet that Viper's referenced above. So scroll up. So, over the course of his first term and only term as president, he's also going to work with the rest of the government to write a new constitution. This constitution is passed and accepted in 1996, and this is going to enshrine all of the steps that Mandela and the ANC had made to reach a more equitable South Africa. So, that's a pretty good moment. Now, it's also at this point that he is going to bring in one of his biggest supporters and one of his best friends, this guy. So this is the Bishop Desmond Tutu, and Desmond Tutu had been a very big friend of Mandela for quite some time, had been a big supporter for him, a big emotional support for Mandela when he was in prison. And Tutu is going to get put in charge of something that is, again, very criticized on both sides. It's called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And what this particular group is supposed to do is look at all of the stuff that had happened under apartheid and, if applicable, bring charges against people that broke the law or that committed atrocities or that were potentially guilty of things like genocide. And this was, once again, really criticized. The African people that were part of the ANC and supporters of Mandela's group criticized them for not going far enough. The white South African people criticized them for going back on their word because Mandela had agreed that there would be limitations to what types of crimes could be tried, and Desmond Tutu found a lot of stuff. Go figure, under 80 years of apartheid, there were a lot of crimes committed. So, neither side really likes this stuff, but it was about bringing the truth, and it was about part of the reconciliation process, right? Sometimes you got to just rip the scab off to get the wound to heal. And this was another thing that he did that was pretty heavily criticized. Now, he's also going to get married for a third time to the lady pictured here. This is Graça Machel, and she was somebody that he had met actually earlier on. She's from Mozambique. She was at the time when he first met her, living in Mozambique, and this is part of one of his larger tours after he had gotten out of jail. But they're going to get married in 98. So, at the end of his term in 99, he decides he's done. He's not going to run for office again, and he's going to retire. And just because he was retiring from politics doesn't mean that he was stopping working. In fact, this is where he gets a lot more active in stuff like AIDS. AIDS in South Africa is still a big issue, and Mandela's charity is going to target not AIDS just in South Africa, but also all of Africa. And he does a lot of work trying to organize pharmaceutical treatments, research, awareness, distribution of things like condoms. And this is going to be one of his larger parts of his retirement. He does a lot of work to try to, or did a lot of work to try to stem the spread of the AIDS epidemic in Africa. But he's not done talking. He actually, if anything, gets more talkative. And he starts being very vocal about a lot of the stuff that he didn't like going on in the wider world. He doesn't really care a lot for didn't really care a lot for a lot of the policies in England. He absolutely did not care for the invasion of Iraq. He said some pretty hurtful things about Tony Blair. At one point, saying that Tony Blair was basically like an American junior minister of politics. So, yeah. He gets kind of pointed. And I guess you can do that after you spent almost 20 years of your life in prison and taken down an evil government and become head of state and passed a new constitution. So he spends the rest of his life working on AIDS and trying to keep the system that he put in place inside of South Africa running. He sort of hands off the reins to his vice president or deputy minister, and is a very frequent support for the new government after his absence. And he died in 2013. He was 95. So lived a really long life, and a lot of it in the face of a lot of adversity. But that is Nelson Mandela. Now, so that's all that I had prepared. And I know that we are running pretty late, but in something this convoluted and complicated, I didn't want to just rush through everything and just assume that everything was going to be fine. You got to talk through some of this stuff, especially when it gets specific sometimes, right? But do we have any questions about any of this material? Do we have any point redemptions that anybody wants to do? A fighter never stops fighting. They may get tired, but they never stop fighting. That is correct. The parallels between Northern Ireland and South Africa are why you're so fascinated by Nelson Mandela. The color orange is even disproportionately represented. Well, there we go. Noger, what up, man? I didn't see you lurking there in the background. Everybody go follow Noger because he's really smart and says smart things and will make you smarter. And he's also a pretty cool guy. So, I mean, there's that. But the smart thing is also important. So, I've got to rake 3 things here. Nightmare on Elm Street, John Carpenter's The Thing, and The Shining. Oh, that's not even hard. John Carpenter's The Thing is, in my opinion, the best horror movie that's ever been made. I don't think that you can get better than that. So that's clearly number 1. And then I think that if we're just going with pure horror, let's see, that's tough. Now, are we talking about like cinematic quality? Because The Shining is a better movie, like movie made than Elm Street. But I think that Elm Street is probably scarier than The Shining if we're actually just looking at horror stuff. So it's either Thing, Elm Street, or The Shining if we're looking at horror content, or if we're looking at cinematic quality, probably The Thing, and then Shining, and then Elm Street. I think that The Thing is just, you can't beat that. I think it's the best horror movie that's ever been made. What up, Chad? How's it going? Yes, Nelson Mandela was a Methodist. And he was a pretty devout Methodist for most of the time. The Shining is your favorite movie ever. The Thing, then Elm Street. And that's okay. That's okay. I mean, all of these are good movies. And if you haven't seen any of these, you should go watch all of these. One thing that we need to do before we leave, we need to pick what we're going to do on the next viewer request. So, we've actually done the number 2 from the last one. I'm Spartacus. Chad Guy. Welcome in.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm glad that I impressed you that much that fast, my friend, but welcome to the adventure. Ghost stories of history. That's one of those that would be really hard to put together. I mean, it's not impossible, but I don't know if I want to. Can you tell a story about Commodore Matthew Perry telling Japan to open its borders? Well, it didn't tell Japan to open its borders. It shot them and forced them to. Matthew Perry was in charge of a fleet sent by President Millard Fillmore over to Japan to open up Japan for trade. They showed up, they held a bunch of people hostage, and then they went off to China to pick up goods, and when they came back, they blew everybody up until they got an audience with ministers, and then eventually an audience with the emperor, who was not really in charge at that point because it was the shogun, the last of the Tokugawa, and then they signed a deal with the emperor for arms exchange and goods exchange, and then the emperor built an own army, and this is the Meiji Restoration, which overthrew the Tokugawa shogunate in 1868. There you go. Okay, so I guess I'm going to have to pull these that everybody is already saying and put them in the list, but I don't know if I want to do any of these. I'm just going to be real honest. So we're filling out a poll for what we're going to cover next. So ghost stories in history, druids, the Dixie Mafia. Does anybody else have a suggestion? The Great Fire of Chicago. I don't think we can get a whole story out or a whole stream out of that one. There's a cow that kicked over a lantern and there's a big fire. That's pretty much it. History of corruption in the LAPD. That sounds more like a podcast. We'll just put Teddy Roosevelt on here. And that'll be an option. All right, so we've got a poll. It's going in the chat. If you look above you, you can click the down arrow and you can vote. And you can vote on whatever you want to. And if you're in the room and you hear the sound of, there's a little bug flying around me, it's driving me crazy. If you hear the sound of my voice, you get to vote. Everybody go vote. What do I want to do? I don't know. So like I'm in a bit of a ticky mood right now, and I know that for me to get anything done is going to take time, and because I have so little time, a lot of these things are ones that would take me a substantial amount of time to put together. So viewer requests can go really, really, really off for me, like things that I'm only loosely aware of, that I have to do a lot of research on, or they can just like dead center something that I could probably do extemporaneously off the top of my head. And given how busy my schedule has been lately, a lot of the topics that I'm seeing pop up are things that are going to take me a lot of time to do. So I'm like, ugh. Not that I won't do them. I might grouse about it. Chad Guy, if you're interested in that, we have done a viewer request stream already on the Meiji Restoration, and we talked about Matthew Perry quite a bit. Let me look up to see which specific stream that was. So that was viewer request episode 35. If you want to go back in the VODs and find viewer request 35, it's the Meiji Restoration, and we talk about Perry and all that stuff a lot for a couple hours. Have I done history of the future, as in different visions of the future? We've done what ancient people thought about the end of the world. So we did eschatology, and we talked about a lot of different apocalypses. No matter what topic Shane would loses, at least it sounds that way. No, it'll be okay. You could set aside an entire year and do the history of World War II, or not. If you have specific things about World War II, we can do that, but probably... Oh, we have like a 4-way tie. You all. Somebody go vote real quick. Somebody go vote real quick. Because the poll is almost closed, and we have a 4-way tie. No. Somebody go vote. Please, don't stick me with this. Oh, you all. Okay, somebody voted. Okay, cool. Okay. I don't know if you all did that on purpose, but that was emotional. That was emotional. Okay, we'll do Teddy Roosevelt. That's fine. It is the season for ghost stories. It is the season for ghost stories. We did the history of scary stories as a viewer request already. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to do history of ghost stories. Let me find history of scary stories and tell you which one that is. History of scary stories was viewer request 19. So we've already done the history of scary stories. Dead Heats for 8 votes and 17 viewers. Entire Roman Empire founding collapse. We have done most of that. We've covered Rome all the way from its founding up through the 7th century in the Mainline Adventures in History show. Yeah, I could do that. Like if it was the whole Roman Empire, I could do that. I like ghost stories for the location. Like to be a real ghost hunter. Oh yeah, that'd be cool. History of Eris's browser. I have not talked about any of the World's Fairs at all. Yeah, we've done Rome a lot. We've talked about Rome quite a bit. You grew up across the river from the Roosevelt's mansion. Oh, that's cool. If Ghost Stories wins, you can just take longer to come up with it. You have 4 weeks before Halloween, right? Clutch at the end. There we go. You need to do all of them in a stream? No. Who came in second? No, I don't know who came in second. There's a winner, and then everybody came in second. There was a tie. And no, my ghost stories. Yes, we have done Vlad the Impaler. Let me see which episode he was. He was one of the first. He was viewer request episode number 3. Oh yeah. So all of the stuff that I'm mentioning is in the VODs. We have not done history of the Chupacabra. I don't know if I could get an entire stream out of Chupacabra. Maybe cryptids, but I don't know if that would even be a history of cryptids. That would just be, here are a bunch of cryptids. Do I think the Anunnaki were legit? No. There was a winner and 3 losers. The second was all of the others. Okay. My voice is actually kind of starting to go out. And that's very, very odd because usually I can go through a whole thing. But I've already taught for 3 hours today. And now I just taught for another 2 hours. And I taught for 3 hours yesterday as well. So let's go see who we're going to go raid. Let's just go raid Nixlotl because that's a delightful place to raid, and I don't think that we've raided Nixlotl in a little bit. So, Nixlotl, supporter of the stream and supporter of the chat, we're going to go give Nix a raid and see what is going on over in that channel. Let's see. Shane has stamina. I do. The Windsors are actually related to Val the Impaler. The European nobility is pretty much all related to each other anyway. All right, so we're going to go raid Nick Slottle, artist for the puppy head pat emote, delightful streamer, fun times, good stuff. Thank you all for hanging out. Shout adventure when we get there. If you've got those lovely adventure hats, throw those in the chat. Otherwise, the next time you'll see me is on Thursday, and I think we're talking about the Franks. I think that's the correct group. If we're not talking about the Franks, we're probably talking about the Visigoths, but I'm pretty sure it's the Franks, or the Merovingians. I can't remember who I said. Yeah, we're talking about the Merovingians. Come back Thursday for tales of incest and more incest and murder. And we'll have a good time talking about the Merovingians. Thursday, 1900 Central Standard Time. Until then, I love you guys. Appreciate you all for coming out and listening to a weirdo talk about history in a weird way. Until then, have a good one. See you later.